I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, your worship, with the exception of Councillors McDermott, Zanko, and Councillor Butler, and Regional Councillor Encina sends his regrets as well.
Thank you. There is an addendum this evening, and that relates to a piece of correspondence from the Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority that relates to the continuing protocols at the bridge. This is now going to be received and hopefully supported by council. I can advise members of council that I had an opportunity to discuss this with MP Vance Badaway on Friday. He is trying to arrange a meeting with the minister responsible for this, Minister Mendocino, and it's tentatively scheduled for Thursday. That will include Mayor Diodati and some others. I've also followed this up with the Chambers of Commerce because it looks like there may be an opportunity to get the border mayors and the Chambers of Commerce to work collaboratively with respect to this. The problem being that it's very difficult for Americans to come across the border with the arrive can requirements. And if you're familiar with arrive can, you'll know that the delays that are involved in the process make it almost meaningless, to be perfectly honest, in terms of the testing. In terms of the vaccinations, that is understandable, and that can be processed. The letter that's on our agenda sets out a number of recommendations that are being put forward by the Peace Bridge Authority, I believe supported by the other bridge authorities in Niagara, and hopefully we'll make some headway with respect to that. So that'll be coming up later in the agenda. I also wanted to comment just very briefly that the June numbers for our on-demand transit are in, and they're very, very exciting. They're quite large. The over 5,000 people used our transit in June. That's a large number, and it's been continuously growing. And so I wanted to thank the staff for continuing to work with that and the service provider. Those numbers will continue to grow. As you all know, on January the 1st, 2023, the Niagara Region will be taking over the transit, but we will continue to be responsible for advocating for the needs of this community and, of course, paying for the cost of transit as it relates to Fort Erie. Those are the announcements and the addendum. There's also an item, a closed session item with respect to 271 Ridgeway Road, which will be dealt with later on in the agenda as well. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have two this evening. The first one is on the consent agenda. It's 10.22. That's to receive the Fort Erie SPCA Board of Director minutes from May 26, 2022. As the company I work for has provided contracted services for the Fort Erie SPCA. And the second I have is bylaw 90-2022 on the agenda. That's to amend the zoning bylaw for 28 Ridge Road South as my company rents property from Integra Incorporated, Your Worship. Thank you.
Are there any others? If not, then we've got a couple of upcoming public meetings. One is a combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment with respect to 644 Garrison Road. That will be held on August the 8th, 2022 here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. There will also be an opportunity to participate digitally, so it's a hybrid meeting. And the report with respect to that application should be available the Wednesday prior to August the 8th. There's also a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of common elements condominium application scheduled for the same date. August the 8th, 2022 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. Again, it will be a hybrid meeting. And again, the information report for council should be available the Wednesday prior to that. We do have a public meeting this evening, and that public meeting, before I go to that public meeting, Councillor Butler, I know that you're just getting set here. Did you have any pecuniary interest or disclosures? Okay. So we have a public meeting with respect to the third access to Douglastown. That's based on the report IS 21-2022, which we received last month. This is an unusual public meeting in the sense that it's not pursuant to legislation. It's something that council has requested because we want to hear from members of the public. So I'm going to ask the Director of Infrastructure Services, Mr. Kelly Walsh, if he would like to make any comments before we go to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you noted, we had a staff report, a technical memo presented about a month ago. That memo looked at looked at the options at a very high level. Didn't delve into details beyond feasibility and cost. The recommended course of action coming out of that memo through the staff report to council is to undertake a municipal class EA. That process looks at things in a much more detailed level. It concerns economic issues, social issues, environmental issues, and engineering issues, constructability and such. That process also includes two mandatory points of contact. So this is certainly, if we go down that course, this is certainly not the public's last kick at the can on this issue if we go forward. The public has had a period to review the technical memo, and tonight is their opportunity, as you mentioned, to provide comments to council on that issue.
Right, and there have been some comments already provided to council through the town's webpage. So the way this is going to be handled is we will ask individuals who wish to address council to come forward. I'll recognize them. You can provide your comments to us. These comments will be recorded by our staff, and they will assist us when we eventually do deal with this issue. And as Mr. Walsh has said, this will not be the first opportunity for the public to have input to council relative to this issue. So I'm going to start the public meeting, and I will ask for anyone who wishes to address council. Mr. Hunter, please come forward. We will ask you for your name and address so that we have that for the record.
Get me on camera first. My name's Greg Hunter. I live at 3735 Sussex Lane. Okay. I've lived in Fort Erie all my life, 59 years. I've lived in Black Creek for 21 years. My presentation has 3 sections. First, I'll talk about the third access to Black Creek Douglastown. Then I'll talk about the proposal to widen Baker Road. I'll talk about the Netherby Road option. And just from the beginning, I'm opposed to widening Baker Road to 4 lanes, and I'm in favor of building a new road through the undeveloped land south of Baker Road. We have 3 basic needs for good, safe traffic flow in Black Creek Douglastown. We need a third access road to accommodate temporary closures of either Baker or Black Creek roads. We need access for the new residential development proposed south of Baker Road, and we need access for the commercially zoned property on the corner of Netherby and Baker. We need a comprehensive plan which addresses all 3 needs, because if we resolve only 1 or 2, the other will come back later when perhaps fewer options are available. The third access is needed to accommodate the temporary closures on Baker Road. In 2019, Baker Road was closed for approximately 4 weeks for sewer and road construction, and 100% of the vehicle traffic was diverted onto the narrow winding section of Black Creek Road. In 2022, and actually they just marked the road the other day, Black Creek Road is going to be closed for 3 to 5 weeks while they replace a large culvert beneath Black Creek Road. And in 2023 or later, Black Creek Road will be closed for approximately 8 months at the Niagara Parkway while the bridge over the Black Creek is reconstructed. We need a third access to accommodate the increased volume. In 2019, the population of Black Creek Douglastown was approximately 600 residents. The River Trail Estates development will add 220. Black Creek Signature will add 442. And if Spring Creek Estates gets approved, it'll add 549. So the population in Douglastown is going to go from approximately 600 to over 1,800. That's 3 times as many vehicles and pedestrians. The property at the corner of Netherby Road and Baker is zone commercial, and currently there's no access permitted to that lot, and that property could end up landlocked if the town doesn't finalize a plan for access to that property. Council directed staff to investigate options for a third access to Douglastown, and Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions was retained to conduct the third access study. And I remember Mayor Redekop at a previous meeting a few years ago, I don't remember exactly what the date was, but when we were discussing this issue, you commented, you said a third access means a third access. This is the proposed solution where they would widen Baker Road to 4 lanes between Netherby and Black Creek Road. I took a photograph the other day of some of the new homes that are being built on Baker Road, and you'll see there's 4 cars in that one driveway. Now you can just visualize moving the curb 3.5 meters or 11.6 feet towards the front of those homes, and then building a sidewalk next to the curb. During the winter months, 2 lanes worth of snow would be plowed into the end of these driveways and onto the sidewalk, and we all know what a challenge it is to move the snow at the end of our driveways when we have a big snowfall. Well, these folks, they're going to end up with 2 lanes worth of snow at the end of their driveway. And the question is, where are these people supposed to park their vehicles? This is what the intersection would look like on the corner of Baker Road and Black Creek Road if it were widened to 4 lanes. Talk a little bit about curb extensions. You'll see in the photograph on the left there, that's Ridge Road and Dominion Road. The little bump outs, some people call them bump outs. And on the right, that's what the design is going to be, or is, for Jarvis Street and Central Avenue, where the bump outs are going to be added. And the reason why they add those bump outs is because it makes the intersection safer. It reduces the pedestrian crossing distance and time in the roadway, particularly for those who have mobility issues. And they also reduce vehicle turning speeds. If you decide to widen Baker Road to 4 lanes, that'll provide the opposite of these, and it will make that intersection less safe. In my opinion, there's a better solution for satisfying the accessibility needs of our community than widening Baker Road to 4 lanes. And my suggestion is to build a right turn only lane from Netherby Road, south of Baker Road, into the undeveloped land, and to build a new road connecting Baker Road to Westbrook Avenue through the undeveloped land. This is from the report submitted by the consultant. Staff discussions with Ministry of Transportation Highway Corridor Management section have found that the ministry has designated Netherby Road from the QEW highway ramp to Baker Road as controlled access highway. And I tried to confirm that, and I don't pretend to be an expert on anything to do with the MTO, but what I found was that the MTO documents do not support that statement. And I'm not saying that the MTO didn't say it. What I'm saying is that their documents don't support it. So I had 2 questions. Is Netherby Road really a controlled access highway? And what are the dimensional requirements to add an egress from Netherby Road? A right turn exit only, not an intersection. I found this. This is a publication from the MTO. It's titled Highway Access Management. It was published in December of 2013, and it was recently superseded in April of 2022. This is what the new document looks like. The chapter that pertains to highway access management is Chapter 4. What I learned was that highways are basically classified in two ways. It's either considered a King's Highway or a controlled access highway. This is a map in their document which shows the functional classifications of the different roads in southern Ontario. And it also has a map that is zoomed in on our peninsula here, and you'll see that Netherby Road, no part of Netherby Road is shown on this map. So I found this website. It's an ArcGIS map, and I was looking at it on July 3rd, so it's pretty current. And I typed in MTO jurisdiction, and it showed me this map which shows the off-ramps from the QEW onto Netherby Road. But the most important thing is in this little circle here where it says Netherby Road is classified as a local street. Also in that document is this table, and you'll see on the left there 4A and 4B, the local roads are considered a King's Highway. They aren't considered a controlled access highway. So since Netherby Road is considered a King's Highway, it doesn't get us off the hook because you still have to get a permit from the MTO for an access or an egress. It says, however, in established built-up urban rural settlement areas, the ministry will consider permitting new access connections for infilling purposes, even if they are outside the normal access management policies and standards. And that says to me that the MTO is willing to be flexible with their requirements. So the second question is, what are the dimensional requirements to add an egress from Netherby Road? And I'm talking about a right turn exit only, not an intersection. I found this PowerPoint presentation created by a guy named Ken Teasdale. He was a senior project manager with the MTO, and it was quite interesting to me. He published it in 2014. And in his PowerPoint presentation, it explains a little bit of detail regarding the dimensions from interchange ramps. So prior to December 19th, 2013, there was no standard for the dimensions. But after December 19th, 2013, the MTO imposed some minimum dimensions and desirable dimensions. This is what we're dealing with in Douglastown. From the top of that off-ramp to the corner of Baker Road, it's approximately 480 meters. This is an updated diagram from the new MTO document that was issued in April, and you'll see there's a Y and a Z dimension, there's a W and an X dimension. So the Y and Z dimension, 125 to 185 meters, and the Y and Z are for non-signalized commercial private road access connections, and W and X are for public roads, service roads, or signalized commercial private road access connections. For the W and X, it says variances below the desirable offset spacing criteria down to and including the minimum offset spacing criteria will only be considered where a valid case can be supported by the MTO through a traffic impact study. There's also this table in their document. You'll see on the left the major local road and the minor local road, but the most important thing is Note H. And Note H says the MTO will work cooperatively with municipalities and developers to determine appropriate intersection spacing and other roadway characteristics where needed to support intensification and more compact development within communities. So what I see there is a cooperative effort plus flexibility equals success. They also have this other thing called an Interchange Highway Access Management Plan, or IHAP for short. And it says IHAP should be actively pursued if it appears that access management minimum standards will not be achieved. And what I'm proposing, a right turn only off of Netherby into the undeveloped land at approximately 285 meters. And I think we could prove that that would not compromise either safety or mobility to the MTO. By comparison, if you look at Gilmore Road just over here, where it intersects with Spears Road North, it's only 45 meters from the end of the merge lane to the intersecting local road. But actually, if you drive over there and look at it, they actually almost touch each other. Now, this came from the region's map, but if you look, you'll see they're almost touching. The other thing that I would propose is building a new road connecting Baker Road to Westbrook Avenue through the vacant land, and this route was not considered by the consultant in the report. I tried to imagine what would be the worst-case scenario for us in Black Creek and Douglastown, and the first thing is to have Black Creek Road closed where it intersects the Niagara Parkway, and that's going to happen. It's going to happen in a few weeks when they replace that culvert, and it's going to happen next year for 8 months when they replace that bridge. Now, the second bad thing that could happen would be if we had a serious house fire or a serious accident at the corner of Baker and Black Creek Road. All the people who live in Douglastown would be stuck. They wouldn't be able to get out, and nobody would be able to get in. So I drew in my proposed right turn lane and my proposed road there, and you'll see that even if the worst case happens, residents and emergency services would still be able to access the neighborhood if those two features were built. In contrast to that, if we widen Baker Road to 4 lanes and that worst case scenario happens, we're stuck. Those people can't get in or out, and it could be major problems. And I believe in engineering terms, it's called a single point failure, where the whole system shuts down when one thing fails. So Mayor Redekop and councillors, please pass a motion directing town staff to enter into an interchange highway access management plan with the MTO to develop a comprehensive plan for a third axis that allows for temporary and emergency road closures, a third axis that will handle increased volume for the new developments, and access to the commercially zoned property on the corner of Netherby and Baker. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. And Madam Clerk, will you make sure that all members of council receive a copy of this presentation? Questions? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through you to Greg. Greg, thank you for your presentation, all
You're
the
welcome.
research you do. One of my questions, we could go back to slide 28 and 29. I'm just wondering if you could go over that again, because there's a lot of information.
'28?
I just
Okay,
wanted
I'll
you to kind of
zoom it up
explain
there.
this again, because it was a lot of,
Okay, so I got this map from the region actually has a system, it's called the Navigator system. You can go on there and it shows you all the property lines, all the addresses, all the building footprints, and a lot more than this. But this is what I decided to include.
okay, if I can continue, so it's 480 meters from where the ramp basically touches Netherby at the top to Baker. That's where the 480
Yes.
meters come? Okay, thank you. Then the next slide. Now, this is your suggestion in regards to,
Nope. This is the graph from the MTO document that was just issued in April of this year, and it shows their desirable and their minimum dimensions.
okay, so if I can continue, so if it's 480 meters from the ramp to Baker Road, and 400 meters would be the minimum, that would still leave us with 80 meters of perhaps workable room?
It's possible, yes.
Okay, thank you. If I can continue. The next question is, you're talking about a turn right onto Douglas, which would also mean they can turn right from the ramp into the Douglastown Black Creek area, but they could also turn right when they're leaving the area to go down, further down Netherby Road towards the boulevard, right?
I wouldn't advocate that. I think the MTO would have a problem with that, because what you'd have is, here, just look up here. You'd have traffic crossing. They don't like it when traffic crosses, because you'd have vehicles coming down Netherby Road trying to make a right on Baker, and you would have traffic coming out of here trying to go to the Parkway or Niagara Falls, and you'd get, I think they call it weaving, actually. You'd have cars crossing over each other. So what I thought was just a right turn exit from Netherby here to take pressure off of Baker. And if Spring Creek Estates gets approved and you have 500 people living in here, a lot of the traffic is going to go right in here. And I don't think the MTO would ever, as they've said, allow an intersection here, because you'd have two intersections close together. And one of the things they talk about in their documents is they don't want to impede mobility. Whereas if you get too many intersections close together, it takes forever to get anywhere. And also, it's a safety concern.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. One of the thoughts that I'm wondering, if there was a collision at Baker and Netherby, what would that do to the residents getting in and out of this subdivision?
Well, fortunately, with the new subdivision that they've built, the Black Creek Signature, residents could make a right down Simpson, and they could get out onto Netherby that way. So we're kind of fortunate in that regard. And originally, I thought that was the worst-case scenario, but then I realized, no, the worst-case scenario is something bad happening at Baker and Black Creek, because that'll stop it.
Thank you very much, and thanks again, Greg, for all the work.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much, Mr. Hunter, for your presentation. You put a lot of work into this, and we do appreciate it. I'm glad you're on slide 28. I just want to raise an issue that you may not have considered, and I'm just wondering if you have. You've measured from the end of the ramp terminal going Toronto-bound to the intersection of Netherby and Baker. I'm just wondering, are you aware that they actually calculate the distance from, if you look at the very top where the pink ends, right at the top there, are you aware that that's where they calculate the distance?
Yeah, they talk about the center of the road.
No, I'm not talking about the center. I'm talking about the distance from where the interchange ends to Baker Road.
Like, oh,
No,
sorry.
go back to 28. You're perfect right there.
So like right there?
No, go north. Stop. No, go north. Right there where the property line is.
Yes.
That's where they calculate the 400 meters. I'm just wondering if are you aware of that?
I don't understand your question.
The distance for intersections.
But that's not an intersection, that's just a property line.
No, what he's saying is that his understanding is that the MTO would calculate the 400 meters or the 800 meters or the 125 that you've referred to, and that would be the starting point, not the actual point where the ramp ends or first meets Netherby Road. I think that's your point.
Yeah, and the reason I raise that is that's probably the issue the MTO has here, which would lead to my next question. You've put a lot of effort into an access south of Baker, and we certainly appreciate that. But if the MTO comes back and says no, it's a controlled access road, we have jurisdiction over it, we are not going to allow access. Is there another item within the report that is something you would prefer and that you would believe would be beneficial if the MTO says that this is not an option and it's never going to happen?
I haven't considered the other options, but the one thing I'll say, whatever you do, it's got to be south of Baker in order to solve the problem. Because if you build it north of Baker, you haven't solved the problem.
I appreciate where you're coming from, but I think the MTO might have a different saying on that. But
Well-
I appreciate it. I just wanted to raise that point if you did that. I know where you're coming from.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do, and from what I've read, we seem to have given up on this option based on a phone call or a conversation. If you put it in writing,
No, we haven't given up on that option. In fact, we're going to be taking this up with the Ministry of Transportation if we get the opportunity at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference and thereafter. So No, and I've got a couple of questions when I get a chance.
Can I just finish?
You may
So-
continue.
Thank you. So, if you put it in writing with formal requests and they reject it, they have 2 levels of appeal that you can go to. But the first thing is, you got to make it formal, it's got to be a formal request, and then you go from there. And, you know, I read through a lot of that stuff. I read a lot of flexibility in there. Like, they seem to want to work with people, because by imposing that requirement in December of 2013, they've caused problems for communities that those communities don't even know they have a problem yet. And they probably realize, you know what, we've got to work with these people a little bit. And that's the process I would take.
And that this is not the only, are you aware that this is not the only issue with regarding corridor access? This is the bane of many municipalities' existence and things going on. I just wanted to raise that issue. That's why I asked you, is there another option, if this is not on the table, is there another option that you would prefer?
I haven't considered another option, but like I said, whatever it is, it's got to be south of Baker.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other members of council? So, Mr. Hunter, I just wanted to go back to to this issue, and I agree with you that the solution is has to be south of Baker Road, because that's where all these new houses are going. Have you considered the possibility of seeking a signalized intersection? Maybe in the area that you're talking about, coming out of the Spring Creek Estates, so that there would be more than just a right in, because part of the problem is going to be how you get people out of here. They're all going to have to go to Baker Road.
Well, I don't think the MTO would approve a signalized intersection. The one thing I thought of, and somebody should probably think about this, the corner of Baker and Netherby should probably be a traffic circle at some point, because if they ever start developing homes on the west side of Netherby Road, if Niagara Falls ever approves homes in that area, the volume of houses and people is going to be incredible. That might not happen for 20 years, but somebody should start looking ahead at that.
Okay, I can assure you the MTO isn't as collegial and wanting to be as cooperative as you might hope, but that's been our experience. However, your advice has been extremely helpful, and we certainly will take advantage of that when we meet with ministry officials.
Can I just say, though, like, I've had a few interactions with the MTO, and I've found them to be very helpful to me. You know, whenever I ask them for anything, they're right on it. And one of the things that they helped me with was when the town put that enhanced boundary sign on the QEW, there's a guy named Lance Dutchak, and I don't know who he is or where he is, but he's with the MTO, and he was very helpful to me. And after that, I sent him a few questions, and he was right on it. So I've got nothing but good things to say about the MTO.
Have you had further communication with the MTO since the sign issue?
Yeah, they actually helped me find those 2 documents.
So when you, perhaps you can pass on to us your contacts that may be of assistance to us, because they may not be the people that we get directed to in the first instance, so that may be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. We very much appreciate the time you put into this. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this issue? We have received a fair bit of yep, please come forward. We have received a fair number of individuals who have contacted us by email or on our website. We would need your names and address for the record, please.
Pam Longster, and my husband Mark, at 2842 Baker Road, right across from the Black Creek Community Center.
And how do you spell your last name?
Longster.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay.
Well, our residence is directly in the section of Baker Road that's at question. Again, right now, they've just put in a sidewalk, so we have that 10-foot boulevard. And again, our first and most foremost concern is the snow removal. We did come up while the house was being built and went down Baker Road to look at the home several times, almost every weekend actually, last year. And during those storms and those snow removal times, it would certainly make it difficult. So when we park our vehicles to the house, we only have about a foot before we're actually at the sidewalk. With the proposal to have 3.5 meters of road on north and south of Baker, that would leave the road right to the end of the sidewalk, which would mean, again, we'd be responsible for keeping the sidewalk clear for the residents, but it would be such a challenge to do so without that boulevard to receive that snow. We feel a third access into Douglastown is definitely necessary, but if it wasn't an option, we would be more interested in seeing 7 meters of road added to the south side of Baker Road as opposed to 3.5 meters on either side. And when we look at the north side has all the hydro poles that would have to be moved. The south side just has the street lights. So in the case of 3 meters, 3.5 meters on north and south, poles would have to be moved on both sides. Again, that would obviously disrupt the hydro power to the whole community for a period of time while the hydro poles were replaced, as well as the cost of doing so. If you go south and 7 meters south, you're just looking at removing or replacing the street lights on that side. So it wouldn't be much of a disruption while the process was going of increasing the size of the road. Aside from the actual disruption it would cause to the residents on that side where there's no residents on the south side of Baker Road. So we just thought we'd come in at least
Say our piece like that.
offer our opinions and so forth.
However, we do support Mr. Hunter's proposals of a third going forward in the future, knowing that there will be new developments going all around us. And being in that spot of Baker, there is a very good chance, as he said, if it were ever to get deadlocked at Black Creek and Baker, we're in a lot of trouble. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much. Do any
Thanks.
members of the council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through you to the presenters. First, the good news. In the town of Fort Erie, you do not have to keep your sidewalks clear. It's nice if you do, but it's not a requirement, so just,
Okay, no, that's good to know.
just sort of- unless we change it, but right now, you're
Well,
not
we're
responsible for
neighborly.
the sidewalk, but many responsible people do it because they have to get in another driveway anyway. But anyway, just thought I'd add that. If we add it to the south side, what about the community center?
The community center would take the bigger hit, but it's just one residence, and they do have, there's enough land there
the
that
front of
I don't
it.
think it would affect their parking area, just would shorten their entrance into their parking area. And the rest of the land is unoccupied currently.
Well, I would think that it probably would be a big deal for the community center to lose
Absolutely.
about 27 feet of frontage from, that they're currently using. That's a big chunk on the community center, and even though it may count as one building, I will, you've only been here, and welcome to the neighborhood, by the way.
Thank you.
It's well-used, extremely well-used, so even it's one building, how would you think that the people would be accessing it then? Because they have to get into the community center, right? And the community center opens up on the side, the driveway ends at Baker. So how do you see the safety of those who are attending the community center? And many residents do walk to the community center. Have you considered that?
Yes, perhaps then we could just put an exit and an entrance along Black Creek further south, as we're proposing with the new third entrance. We could always switch it around that side, it doesn't necessarily, as long as they can have an access, entrance and an exit. I don't know if Baker Road has to be that exit and entrance.
Yeah, so if we did have that secondary road that Mr. Hunter was referring to that would intersect into Baker, there would be options to have an entrance into the parking area through that side as well. But again, we didn't actually measure 20 feet or 7 meters from the other side to see how much would be removed from impacted on that side. We just looked at it from the
Costs
impact
and
on our side.
feasibilities and everything with all the new residences and now sidewalks that have gone in, right?
And I can appreciate your position, but I did want to speak up on the community center. That's a very, very busy area.
Oh, absolutely.
Anything further, Councillor?
But thank
Noyes?
you. No, that's it.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Longster.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this particular issue? Yes, please come forward, sir. Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
And could we have your names and address for the
Mark
record?
and Kelly Hand. We are 3837 Black Creek Road. Forgive me, I don't have my glasses, but Kelly's written this really big, so. We understand that there was a few options that suggested possibly diverting more traffic onto Black Creek and widening Black Creek Road between River Trail and the Niagara Parkway. And that, obviously, as a 25-year resident of Black Creek and in talking with generational residents that are our neighbors, it's, you know, kind of a big concern for us. I know, Mr. Mayor, we've had this conversation over different things over the years, and I know you're familiar with that roadway and how it's utilized by the rest of the Douglastown community. It is, you know, thankfully, it's not the busiest road, but it is the busiest walking area. It's where people take their children and take their dogs and ride their bikes. And that's what so many of us love about the area and don't ever want to see that change. So the thought of widening, and when we look at the idea of Baker Road and what some of our neighbors would face, and we agree that we would never want to see that either. But when we look at Black Creek, what has brought so many people to our little community is the beauty of Black Creek and those trees and that roadway. And just the thought of that ever being touched. Yes, it could sound selfish because we happen to be lucky enough to live there, but it's not just us. It's so many of our neighbors that enjoy that beauty and enjoy that road that we hope we never see anything happening there.
We just don't want the more traffic being brought to that section of the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, I think it's,
Yeah,
it's been a good 25 years of us all saying, let's divert as much traffic away from there. And it just, when we saw that as one option, we thought, uh-oh, who came up with that option? Because, you know, it seems completely against what we've talked about in the past. So we just want to make sure that y'all know there's still a bunch of us there that you know, really would look at every other option prior, and hopefully, and I love what Ken presented, and hopefully, or I'm sorry, Greg, and the idea of the MTO, let's hope they're open to some great suggestions, so.
Yeah, I think you're on safe ground. I don't think we think that widening Black Creek Road is even possible. So I think you're on safe ground. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and thank you very much for coming. So just for myself, the presentation that Mr. Hunter brought forward as far as the third access with the right turn only, that's something that you would support and would prefer that we go down that avenue first and then.
Certainly, that was kind of the one we voted on, and we like the idea. Now, if it's possible that it is a two-way in and out, would be ideal.
I don't think
But
that.
certainly, you know, the developments that are going to occur, and that's one thing where maybe myself and some of my neighbors clash heads. I get the developments will come, and some of us welcome them more than others. But those developments can alter a little, you know?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
just think there's an availability of land there that certainly can make for a better community and make for a safer community. Perfectly a two-way street in and out, but if a right-hand in is is the first step to that. I think it's a good step.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Pleasure.
Preferably south, that's south of Baker,
Right.
yeah.
Any other
Vacant
members of
land.
council? Okay, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through you to Kelly and Mark. Hi.
Hi, Anne Marie.
If they did, and I agree with what the mayor said, I don't think, in my humble opinion, Black Creek Road is an option in regards to widening it. How many big trees are on your property on Black Creek Road?
There's 6 big old silver maples right across the front, so.
What would be the age of the old, I know one is like,
Yes.
Well, certainly when we see the old photographs, and, I mean, they must be, I mean, if we're celebrating 180 years this year,
Of the
I
house.
mean,
of our house.
they must have been there, 150 at least, I would think, you know.
And how
And it's
tall would
funny,
they
we have
be?
lots of tree-hugging neighbors who know more about them than I do. But, yeah, I mean, they're a big part of that
Makes-
community, and we'd never want to see that change, so.
that's all, Mark, then, Kelly, thank you.
Thank you, Emery.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address council on this issue? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Gail Somerville, and I live at 2779 Baker Road. And I just wanted to say I feel that having another road in, the best solution I feel would be if it could be both ways. And I wouldn't be against either a traffic circle or lights, because people are coming down there. The last time they stop is at Sodom Road. It's 80 kilometers. I walk sometimes that road with my dog back, and they're flying by. And with the amount of volume we have now coming out of Baker, they aren't slowing down. And if you have a lot of people coming in, a lot of people going out, it's been really difficult with all the construction too and all the different vehicles, so we know what's coming. So I'm just a little, I guess, perplexed as to why, when the South Shores, and we spoke about that exact problem with the roads then, coming in and out, and that was just with the South Shores development. The one, I believe it's Black Creek Signature with Rinaldi, that hadn't been approved or started yet. So at that time, I spoke with you, Anne Marie, about that, and you said you were asking council then about getting another road in. So now we have Black Creek, the Signature there, that subdivision, and now there's another one coming. Why has no one, back when the first subdivision was going in, contacted MTO to even see, you know, what can we do about this now? Why are we sitting here now doing this? I just don't understand why it's been so long. Like, obviously, everybody realizes how many extra cars are coming in and out with each subdivision. So I'm just a little confused why. And it's almost like now you're putting it back with the people that live there, okay? You know, these people were concerned it might go like down their small, you know, the river trail. And now the people on Baker Road, we now are having to deal with this. I don't feel that's right. I think it's a responsibility here that when you see a new subdivision coming in, you look at all these things, you go to the place. You can see that's not a long road either from where it's coming in. So, like, I really think you have to support the people that live there and do something that's best for all of us. And definitely the additional road coming in would really help alleviate a lot of this. And you yourself, I guess, knew about it a while ago too, and you said you agreed that it should be a second road. And I know there's not a lot of us there, but there's enough of us there that I think something should be done that gives us access with two roads coming in and out.
And that's precisely why we're here. We need to come up with a solution, and we want to make sure that the solution is reflective of what the people who live in that area agree is appropriate.
Okay.
Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Thank you, Gail, for your presentation. Did you realize that there was a third access?
Yes, we talked about that. I don't think that really, where they've stopped the house there, put, I don't know if it's going to be a building spot or what, like,
No, you're right, that before any of the houses were built, when the site plan, and I was not on council, I want to make
but you knew then too that that was not going to happen.
No,
Like they'd already changed the plans around that, that road wasn't going through.
Well, perhaps. I understood that it was planned and then the site plan changed based on input from different levels. But anyway, I think you're right. The third access is necessary. Do you agree that it should be south of Baker Road?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and thank you very much. So earlier, when Mr. Hunter was here, he asked council to go through with the 3 different options.
Yes,
And are you okay with that, to get
Yes.
started?
yes.
Yes, okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Somerville. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council on this topic? I'll ask one more time. Anyone wish to address council on this particular topic? If not, then I'll declare this public meeting closed, and we will continue on with the agenda. And thank you very much for all of you who have come out with respect to the third access issue. We appreciate your comments and your concerns. So, there is no regional councilor report this evening, but we've got a couple of presentations, and then we have a delegation. So I'm going to start with the presentation, and I'm presuming that Zoe Zimmerman is here. Yes, in the back, and I'm guessing Isaac is the fella beside the... Isaac's over there, yes. Okay. So, I'm going to start with Zoe Zimmerman, who placed first in her division during the Ontario Gymnastics Championships in Ottawa on May 21st, 2022, with an all-time personal best score. She placed first as part of Team Ontario in the group competition days later, and days later she finished 7th overall in her division after 2 days of competition at the 2022 Canadian Artistic Gymnastics Championships. For Zoe, just being there was a huge accomplishment. She trains an average of 25 hours per week at the gym, Quantum Niagara. She prepares herself for competition by listening to motivational music, then watches her routines and goes through the steps over and over until she has reached perfection. She enjoys all 4 events that she competes in: vault, uneven bars, balance beam, and floor routine. And but perhaps her preference is the uneven bars. Her parents are extremely proud of Zoe's hard work and dedication to succeed, and Zoe plans to continue her gymnastics career and hopes to compete again in future competitions at the provincial and national levels. Zoe encourages other children to consider gymnastics and to be persistent in whatever they're doing. She has found that hard work really does pay off, and Zoe, your family, and our community are very proud of you. So if you would come forward, I will make a presentation to you. So this is a certificate that we're providing to you, Zoe, and it congratulates you on behalf of the residents of the town of Fort Erie for your accomplishments in gymnastics. And this is a town of Fort Erie pin. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. And you're welcome to say a few words if you wish, but you don't have to.
It's okay.
So let's turn around and we'll get that. Yeah, good. I think I know your dad. Great. Thank you very much. Good luck and congratulations. And we have a presentation to another Zimmerman. This would be Isaac Zimmerman. And he placed second in canoe and third in kayak for Canadians in Oklahoma City in May at the National Team Trials and Pan American Championships, which also served as the Canadian team qualifier for the World Championships. And Isaac's journey started 6 years ago on a family vacation up north at Palmer Rapids. Once he was in the kids program for paddling, he fell in love with the sport and wanted to learn more. His coach happened to be a slalom and kayaking coach, which was very advantageous. And after paddling for about 3 years, I'm advised that Isaac was introduced to slalom and started training in Ottawa monthly with the national team coach, Mihail Stanishevsky. He traveled to Charlotte, North Carolina in March to train on the bigger whitewater courses before heading to Oklahoma. He earned a chance to represent Canada, and that became a dream come true. Isaac plans to continue paddling, training hard, and see where the sport takes him. The win in Oklahoma qualified Isaac for the Canadian squad headed to Italy, where he continued training for the ICF World Junior and Under 23 Canoe Slalom Championships held July 5th to 10th, 2022. He faced very tough international competition, but gained valuable international experience. And there aren't many people that get to compete on the world stage. And so Isaac finished 54th in canoe and 43rd in kayak, and was and is and should be very proud of his accomplishment. And as are your family and all the residents of the town of Fort Erie. And I just happened to put together that this is all one big Zimmerman family. And I see you kids are great athletes because you come from very athletic stock. So congratulations. And Isaac, if you would come forward, I'll present you with a certificate as well. Zoe's your cousin. Yeah. So Isaac, this is a certificate that we're presenting to you. The council, on behalf of the residents, congratulates you for your accomplishments, your success, and we wish you a great deal of future success. And and there's also a town of Fort Erie pin. So let's get a photograph. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
For those of you who don't know, this would be the fourth generation that I'm aware of great athletes named Zimmerman in the town of Fort Erie. A lot of hockey players, and I know that there's a whole bunch of other, obviously, other talents within the family. So congratulations, and I know the grandparents are very proud. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I also wanted to comment on the achievements of these two young individuals, but I also wanted to comment on the family and the parents who drive these kids back and forth to their different things. My daughter was a provincial gymnast. Trust me, I know what 25 hours, 4 hours each time, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It does change when she gets her license, trust me. But it's a huge commitment, both not just from the individuals themselves, but from the family. And I think the family really deserves some recognition for, if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't be able to achieve what they've achieved. So I just wanted to thank you.
Well said, Councillor Noyes, and that's quite correct. Okay, we're going to continue on with the agenda, and the next delegation is from Stephen Pissarro on behalf of the Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit and the Fort Erie Lions Club, of whom there are a number here this evening. Good evening. Always nice to see the Lions out. Are they going to be roaring, or are they going to let you do the roaring?
the sideline ramps.
Good evening.
Good evening. I recognize I am not here for an award for athletic achievement. I actually pulled the neck muscle reaching for the remote control last week, so.
I'm familiar with your athletic prowess.
Yes. If you've passed me running many times. Mayor Redekop, members of council, and 4-year-old Indy Barnes, who's watching her first council meeting from home. We're hoping this makes her sleepy enough for bedtime tonight, so fingers crossed. I'm here tonight to speak about Sugar Bowl Park. It has a storied history of community contribution and collaboration. The lands of Sugar Bowl Park were donated by Sir Harry Oakes in 1933. The Kinsman Club put in a pool that is very close to my heart in the 1960s. And a significant development of the lands occurred in the 1990s when the Fort Erie Lions Club donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to transform the park into what residents enjoy today. In recognition of that contribution, the park was officially dedicated as Lions Sugar Bowl Park in 1995. I'm thrilled that many members of the Fort Erie Lions Club are here tonight. One of the components contemplated in that transformation, but never realized, was a pavilion. Given that the town is once again embarking on a significant change to the park, we feel that now is the perfect time to once again contemplate its inclusion. Design estimates by staff have shown an expected price tag for pavilion of between $150,000 and $200,000. This includes site preparation, purchase and install, electrical and lighting, and a small contingency fund as well, recognizing the escalation we're currently seeing in construction and construction building materials. The size of the pavilion would complement the scale of the park and would offer the opportunities for a shaded picnic and rest area, as well as the ability for music and performances, taking advantage of the amazing amphitheater configuration that already exists at the park. Also in attendance tonight are members of the Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit. Myself and the amazing men and women of their organization put together a plan to reopen and operate the Kinsman Pool, and did so successfully for 6 years. Thousands of free swimming lessons, hundreds of hours of public swimming, and a few dozen birthday parties thrown in there for good measure. It was a very successful initiative. The Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit strongly believes that any opportunity for individuals to cool off safely is a worthwhile project versus the potentially dangerous consequences of jumping into the river. They do support the splash pad component of the new park design. I'm asking that to further this project proposal, Council requests staff to bring back a report to the August 8th meeting, which would include a formal recommendation, funding implications and operating impacts for your consideration. From Harry Oakes to the Kinsman Club to the Fort Erie Lions Club to the Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit, and many in between. Now is the time for the next stage in the transformation of the Sugar Bowl, and to build upon 90 years of partnership between the municipality and community-minded individuals and organizations. To that end, we do not come empty-handed. The Fort Erie Lions Club would like to contribute $50,000 to this initiative. And the Fort Erie Underwater Recovery Unit, utilizing surplus funds from the Kinsman Pool project, would like to donate an additional $20,000. $70,000 in total, representing more than 1/3 of the cost of the estimated pavilion. Contemplated more than a quarter century ago, let's make the pavilion a reality. Better late than never. Thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basuro. So I know that you've had some discussions with Ms. Hanson, I believe,
Yes.
of our staff. And I don't know about the August 8th timeline, but I think what we'll do when we get to new business, this will come up, and I think what we'll do is let the CAO determine how quickly that could be turned around. It may be that there's been adequate background work done by Ms. Hanson already. I don't know that, but that would be my suggestion. And thank you for speaking on behalf of the two good organizations in our community that have been great community partners in the past. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see everybody.
Nice to see you again.
I had to map quest this place.
Yeah, I bet you have. I have a question for you. I know that the two organizations have worked really hard to fundraise, but you did mention the splash pad and the pool in itself, and you have been a trooper working very, very diligently, and I think there was a band named after the work that you did, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and just wanted to know how you felt about the pool being replaced by a splash pad.
It's bittersweet. The reason that I worked so hard and fought so diligently to reopen that pool is, and many people may not realize this, but I did approach the YMCA way back when. My goal was to offer a free swimming lesson program to residents of this community. It's always been a passion of mine that every kid and adult in this town, many adults also do not know how to swim, many kids and adults, that everybody has the opportunity to receive swimming lessons free of charge. That was my goal. I had looked to, my idea was to approach the municipality to fund it if I could find a pool that would operate it. We only had one pool at the time, and that was adjacent to us. They were not interested in that proposal, so I went ahead and worked towards reopening the only other pool that we had access to. So that was the reason why I worked so hard to reopen the pool, was for the swimming lesson component. Fast forward now almost 10 years since that was a dream of mine to reopen the pool. We're in a much different circumstance. The town is now the owners of the Freeland building, and congratulations to everybody involved who helped to make that happen. I applaud the Boys and Girls Club for stepping up and taking that on, and your worship for your leadership in bringing all of that together. But we now have access to a pool that we didn't have when I was going through contemplations almost a decade ago. So I still believe there's an opportunity for some type of furthered partnership between the municipality and the Boys and Girls Club for some type of free swimming lesson program. That can be debated in the years ahead, because I do believe it's just as vitally important now as it was back then. But that's the reason why I'm comfortable with the closure of the Kinsman Pool. We do have other options for swimming lessons now in the community. I do believe that replacing it with a splash pad is a very good idea, because it is an opportunity to cool off. A splash pad does offer many things that a pool cannot. Extended operating hours, more inclusivity as far as mobility and access needs, broader range of demographics that it can serve. To me, it will be a welcome and very well-used addition to Sugar Bowl Park, provided that we always keep top of mind for those who are the decision makers, access to swimming lessons in this community.
Thank you. That was very insightful. And with respect to the pavilion, what do you think the broader use of the pavilion would be for?
I see it very similar to the pavilion at Crystal Ridge and also at Waterfront Park. Probably more so Waterfront Park, with the availability of use for musical programs, entertainment. If you stand at the top of the library parking lot looking down, that's kind of where staff are envisioning that it would be, right in front of the stormwater management pond. It's just the absolute perfect setting. We do have some experience with some large events. We did movies in the park a few years back. It's just a great place for people to gather, and I think it's just that tipping point between going from a passive park to a park that could be utilized more days of the year through extended hours of operation and some different amenities being put in there. So that would be my goal for its usage.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other councillor? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Passero. Thank you very much for all the information and certainly your passion for swimming lessons. It's always been a big concern. We've got 3, waters surrounding us here. It's just, as I've mentioned in the past, it's not necessarily about, being able to scale the Niagara River over to the United States. It's just that few seconds that it buys a child or anyone else for someone to actually help them out of the water before being swept away. So I appreciate all your effort on that. Thank you. Councillor Butler asked most of my questions with regard to the pavilion, its use, and your the vision for the park. I'm just curious, do you have yet a size in mind? We had some very basic discussion during the Planning and Development Subcommittee meeting, but you mentioned Waterfront Park. Are you looking at a pavilion similar size to that?
I have not personally got to the point where scope and scale is something I could give to you right now, but that would be something that would come forward in Ms. Hanson's report or whomever is going to prepare that. The costs right now are ever-changing. I do know she has gotten some estimates back, which was enough information for me to be able to confidently say $150,000 to $200,000. A lot of it is kind of a fine line between design and aesthetics versus size. So we're definitely looking for a fine line between function and form, but if you give me the choice between pretty and practical, we will take practical.
No, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Passero. As the mayor mentioned, we will be discussing this hopefully later tonight during new business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Any other councillors? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and thank you, Stephen, for coming forward. The 50,000 from the Lions and the 20,000 from the unit is very generous. And I'm just wondering, are you planning on doing any other fundraising towards the project? And number one, if so, I hope you contact Friends of Crystal Beach. I'm sure they'd be interested. They're not as rich as 50,000, but I'm sure they'll help. And my second thought was similar to what the Ridgeway Lions did for Bay Beach Park, and they sold the paving stones, and I know that was very successful. People in the community just loved the thought that they could donate and participate and be part of the contributions to that park. So I'm just wondering, was there any plans for any further fundraising?
We do not have any plans for further fundraising. It's been a monumental effort to assemble the funds that we currently have. I recognize the good work and the dedication of the club as part of the Bay Beach Playground project. I will say, I think one of the reasons why that was wildly successful was because that was a project as part of a larger project. There was a lot of enthusiasm and momentum. I don't know if we would be as successful trying to build something in an already established park, but I can tell you, given the current state of fundraising right now and where the economy is headed, I don't know if we would have any more to bring to the table. But if there are specific organizations, and I'll definitely follow up with you personally about your suggestion, if there are any other organizations that would be willing to contribute, we'd definitely be happy to talk to them. But from a grassroots campaign, we're hoping that our $70,000 is enough to tip the scale for the town to put in the rest.
Okay, thank you. Given that, I guess maybe somebody can send a letter off to Friends of Crystal Beach, and then I'll bring it forward at one of their meetings and see what we can do.
Thank you very much. That's
Okay,
greatly appreciated.
Thank you. There are no other councillors left. You've run the gamut. And as you know, we also have the partnership with Fort Erie International Academy with respect to swim lessons as well, so that has worked out. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, members of the Lions and Underwater Recovery Unit, for this support. So we will, when we get to new business, as I said, we'll hand this over to the CAO, and he'll manage to get this back to us as quickly as we can. There's a fair bit of time with respect to the design in any event of the park, so it may not be. The reason I'm hedging on August the 8th is we've got a mammoth agenda already, and so I don't know whether staff's going to be able to put that together.
That date was driven by staff.
Okay,
yes, and I just want to mention, I should have included it, it will come back in the report, but timelines, we're not looking for the pavilion to be a part of the splash pad project as far as the build goes. We recognize the limited resources on staff, so that would be done the following year. But we would like to get the budget amendment done now and recommendations approved by this council so the staff can begin working towards that in smaller steps.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thank you.
And one last thing, if I could just add that Councillor McDermott looks much better than the last time I was here.
He's been working on it. Okay. You have a question? Yes, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you already asked a question.
Actually, it just came on from the question that the mayor asked. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
In regards to the budget amendment, is the other option to put it to suggest that it be put in next year's budget as opposed to a budget amendment for this year?
I will leave that to council to decide. My goal would be that this council would approve the project because we have funds that we'd like to donate in good conscience, that they're actually going towards an approved project versus waiting for the next council to say yes or no. So my hope would be that before this is a lame duck council, that we get this project approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move then on to the consent agenda. We have one item 10.2.2A, which will have to be dealt with separately. And Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution, so are there any other items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can we remove item 3A? Oh, is it?
10
Yeah,
point-
consent agenda, with respect to Edgemere Road.
Okay, just let me. Ten point three, 10.3A, 10.2.3A. So it'd be 10.2.2A and 10.2.3A, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts that the consent agenda items, with the exception of 0.2A,
10.2.2A
10.2A,
and 10.2.3A.
items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments with respect to the items that remain in the consent agenda? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, Your Worship, just a brief comment with regard to the correspondence that you had mentioned earlier during announcements from the Fort Erie Buffalo Public Bridge Authority. I want to convey my appreciation to them and their organization for providing us with a lot of good factual statistics to actually support the argument that local leaders in the communities have been making about the impact that this is having on our economy and the tourism and the travelers we have. This is certainly an ongoing issue. It is incredibly frustrating for family who have loved ones on either side of the border, for business owners who rely on visitors, particularly from the United States. I mean, it goes without saying a Canadian has a right under Section 6 of the Charter to come into the country, and there's arguments about that. But for an American who's coming to visit and who's coming here to spend money, it's either the app or nothing, and if they don't trust it, then they're not going to come here. They're going to go somewhere else, and we're seeing that happen. It's reflected in the numbers. I'm very thankful, Your Worship. You mentioned earlier the conversations you had with Vance Badaway. I think that's very good that he seems to understand a bit of the challenge we're having. I was a little concerned about another member of Parliament who kind of conveyed that he thought this was overblown, and he blamed more of this on the price of gas. This is not the first time the United States has had $4.50 a gallon gasoline. I remember it. It was in 2008, and I could drive down the streets of Niagara Falls and Fort Erie and see plenty of cars with American license plates. So I hope that member of Parliament checks their facts the next time they want to go defending a measure that is clearly impacting our local economy and the families who live here. So, Your Worship, I look forward to the results of the meeting that you have later this week, hopefully if it happens, whenever it happens, and all your advocacy as well as the other border mayors. This has been dragging on far longer than it has to, but I guess we'll keep trucking on as long as we have to. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Yes, I wanted to make a few comments on the board and committee meeting minutes of the Affordable Housing Committee. I think it's a wonderful organization. I see they're looking for new members, and I think they have suggestions. So I'm not trying to add to looking for more than two, but I would just encourage them to think about perhaps a member from an existing supportive housing development that's already here, a board member that sits on those boards, because I think they would have valuable input in regards to maintaining the existing housing, because it's, it's very important too. I think that would just perhaps add another asset to the board. And then I had another in regards to PDS 54-2022, the contract for Douglas Park. And I did have an opportunity to talk to Sydney briefly, and that in regards to the proposed playground itself, that I am hoping that consideration be given to a rubberized surface for the playground as opposed to the wood chip. I think there are some advantages over it, and I'm hoping that they can, it would be considered in the, when they're planning the costs and planning the design and that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. Any other members of council? I had a question, Mr. Hurlovich, with respect to PDS 53-2022, which is the new Niagara Official Plan Adoption Information Report. And a couple of times, the author of the report makes reference to staff recommending that council refrain from entertaining private development approvals for urban area boundary expansions. That wasn't the essence of the report, but he did make a reference twice. Is that something that staff would be looking for council to consider a resolution on?
Thank you, Worship. I don't think that a resolution would be appropriate. I think it's basically said discourage as opposed to prohibit. So I think the intent is that we would try and steer away from that. Any of these urban boundary expansions larger than 15 hectares are going to require a secondary plan in any event, and that is outlined in the report.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? If not, I'll call the question on the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Noyes, could you proceed with the resolution for item 10.2.2A, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that public consult, no, that's wrong. We're back to that one. Okay, that consent agenda items, that's, okay.
10.2.2A.
10.2A be put on items as recommended, agenda items as recommended.
And the seconder on that
The seconder was Councillor Dubanow.
No, Councillor Dubanow can't second that one. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Lubberts.
Councillor Lubberts, prepared to second that? Councillor Lubberts. That is on the floor. Are there any questions? So, Madam Clerk, this is, let me see if I can find the page. 10.2.2A is the minutes from the Fort Erie SPCA. And there was attached to those minutes a letter which says that everything was fine, but it's not a signed letter. And we were advised at the last council meeting that the 3 members that held the meeting didn't constitute a quorum. So I'm inclined to think that in the ordinary course, we wouldn't be considering this. So should we even consider this evening, or should we do something else, or should we simply vote against it if we're not supportive, or any other alternative you might think of?
Your Worship, yes, it was produced by the SPCA. What they give to us, I have no control over. If council wishes, they may certainly decide that they do not wish to receive it, and we'll note it in the minutes. it won't be voted on. But I believe Mr. McQueen would like to say something as well.
Mr. McQueen.
The correspondence was received by the Fort Erie SPCA by email, came to myself directly. I think if council's not in agreement with the rules that may have applied to that meeting, that they just take no action on those minutes.
So simply not receive it. We vote not to receive it.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions or comments on that item? So if you support receiving it, you vote yes. If you don't support receiving it, you vote no. All those in favor of receiving? Opposed? That is defeated. Councillor Noyes, back to you for item 10.2.3A.
Yes, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lubberts that 10.3A, forwarding A, B, on the agenda item as recommended.
Okay, so that's 10.2.3A.
10.2.
That's seconded by Councillor Dubanow?
Lubberts.
Lubberts again?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move to postpone this as the councillor representative is not present, and I know that she'd like to speak to this.
Sure. Do you have a seconder to defer it to what, August the 8th? Okay, so that's moved by Councillor Butler, seconded by Councillor Dubanow to defer this item to the August the 8th council meeting, or Madam Clerk, would be the regular council meeting of August the 20, whatever. Yes. August 22nd. No, actually, it'd be August, if it's a regular council meeting. Yeah, August the 22nd.
It would be August 22nd.
Yep. Okay, so there's a motion to defer this to August the 22nd. There's no debate or questioning except with respect to timing. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, that then takes us to the reports. And the first report is okay, Councillor Dubanow, do you have the resolution for PDS 34? No. There was a memo, yes, okay, so that's right. So this is on the floor. There was a memo suggesting that because this is connected to the third point of access matter, that it should be deferred to August the 8th. Do we have a motion to defer it to August the 8th? Councillor Dubanow, seconder? Councillor Noyes? Everybody clear on that? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, now we're at PDS, or sorry, IS 19-2022, and that again was previously moved. We had voted on one or two items. We had deferred the first two parts of this in order to get some public input. So this is on the floor then. Right. Okay. So we're going to do this. Yeah, so the agenda is a little bit out of order. Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for IS 21-1-2022, which was a bit of an information report from Mr. Judd relative to public consultation to that point. Resolution number 2.
Resolution 2 I have is Douglas Town Third Access Pre-Design.
Oh, yeah.
That is 21-1-2022.
Yeah, yeah, you know, yeah. You know what, Madam Clerk? So, yeah, IS 21-1, that relates to the Douglastown third access. We're on the traffic calming with IS 19. Yeah, it was previously moved, and so we've now had, there's a memo there with respect to some public consultation that we had requested. So that's on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
I wanted to just comment on how well I thought that Let's Talk Fort Erie worked on this particular thing. I know that there's been many public meetings, we have fewer comments and that, and there was a lot of participation, so more would be nice, but again, there was good participation, and I compliment the staff for pulling it all together, and the survey and the results was quite easy to read. I am hoping that steps can be, I'm all in favor of the common report, and I think the far majority of the residents who commented are saying, let's get going on this. It's a great idea, let's get going, and appreciated, I think, the detail on the possibilities of the different options and different strategies and recommendations. I do hope that we can take steps quickly in regards to some things that don't, that are important but don't necessarily require any construction or any huge expense in regards to, I know that we have the speed indicators, that perhaps we start putting them to quick use, and also painting on the pavement in some very good areas. I have one particular area that you basically put down slow. You just paint slow right on the pavement. I would suggest the one by Stevensville School there where there's a crosswalk, but it's kind of an unofficial crosswalk, but there's a lot of crossing there, would be a good place to put slow on the pavement. And I am hoping that some of the recommendations can be moved. We can start implementing some of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Butler and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a couple of questions, actually, that may lead into more questions. I'm not sure. But the first question that I have is that while it talks about certain items within the document, for example, removing all way stops, but it doesn't really clarify why we should be removing the four-way stops and what we should be replacing it with. And like, I know it justifies that it says it causes more collisions than it prevents, and that there is a higher rate of speeding that happens in between and then afterwards, and there's a lot of noise at those four-way stops. But I've always thought, and perhaps I'm wrong, I've always thought that they were very preventative as well. I don't know if the director has a response for that.
Mr. Walsh, yeah, there are three. You've alluded to some of the reasons, Councillor Butler, but Mr. Walsh, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will not be removing any four-way stops. It's very difficult to remove a stop sign once it's implemented. Traffic operations are a lot about predictive behavior, and when you remove stop signs, you're changing predictions on what will happen for opposing traffic and can lead to collisions. So I'd like to make that clear that we're not removing that. But with stop signs themselves, we shouldn't be installing them as a traffic calming measure. We should be installing them as traffic control where they're warranted.
Councillor Butler?
Yes, thank you. And if I may, so in the downtown core of Ridgeway, I've asked this oftentimes, why at the school there's a 40-kilometer, but in the downtown core it doesn't continue. It actually accelerates to 50, which makes absolutely no sense. And a couple of weeks ago, even myself, I experienced that as I was opening my car door, the cars were just speeding down a narrow pathway while the farmer's market was, and it's congested during the farmer's market, and that's just one example. Is there an opportunity as a direct result to reduce those types of, reduce speed in those types of situations?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a number of requests to look at Ridgeway Road and the speeds on it, and if there is an opportunity for traffic calming, it is high on our priority list, and we hope to get data from Ridgeway Road this year. If not, it will be next year. We have about 6 or 8 roads that we need data on before we can take appropriate action. We're quickly running out of time already, believe it or not, this summer to gain the data. So it will be soon.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you. And then just one more question. There in the chart, it says that, I apologize, I just have to look for where that chart is. Kind of gives directions of how they'll come to a conclusion or a decision with respect to a request for change from council or the member of public. So it would go to traffic calming request. It's on page
6.
Yeah, thanks. And the initial screening, who would be involved in the initial screening to decide whether it meets the criteria or does not meet the criteria?
That's at the staff level. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do get a lot of requests for traffic calming that we know right off the hop it will not qualify for anything. In order to calm traffic, there needs to be traffic. And when somebody says on a very local road, I need traffic calming, it won't work there.
And then one final question, Your Worship, is if there is, just so that the general public knows, if there's a situation where the traffic calming report doesn't coincide with the thought process of the residents, there is opportunity for them to come forward and have those requests or those circumstances looked at in a broader view. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much. I agree with Councillor Noyes that this is a good report and that, our residents are anxiously awaiting some measures to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to echo what Councillor Noyes and Councillor Butler just said about the public engagement and taking the extra time to use Let's Talk Fort Erie to solicit some more response from the public. I think it was a real good thing to do. I actually had residents in Garrison Village who they knew that this was coming, but once it went to Let's Talk Fort Erie, they had more opportunity to see it, and then they actually reached out to me about potential traffic calming and other things like that. So I think that was a good initiative on the part of the town, and if the public outreach is as successful in the future with other initiatives that we're looking into as it was with this, I think it's going to be a great vehicle to get feedback from the public, and I think it worked really well in this situation. So I just wanted to mention that, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. My question is to Mr. Walsh. Did I read where if there's something that residents want to see implemented, that there's a process that they're going to go through to fill out the application or whatever?
There is.
Is that what I read?
Mr. Walsh, can you just briefly run through that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Lubberts is correct, there is a process. That process is outlined on Figure 1 generally, and the specifics of it are in the technical report.
So if the residents feel that there's a need for traffic calming, they can approach the municipality. They do that by contacting you?
Our front desk, yes, upstairs.
Okay. And then there's a process that involves the neighborhood being consulted with respect to whatever is being proposed or what the town staff might consider. But before that goes forward, there's a screening process. And so there's a table that outlines the criteria that staff will look at to determine whether or not this is something that gets past the screening process. If it does that, then there's the consultation that involves percentage of the neighbors representing a number of the households, I believe it is, that if it meets that criteria, then there would be a test program. And that test program would be for a number of months that could range from a year to year and a half, or maybe even 2 years, I think is.
We have a 24-month process, and that's just to ensure we catch at least a full year in there,
Right.
full calendar year.
Yeah, thank you very much. But so I'm just wondering if it's possible that just to make it easier for the residents, that because I know some of them were going to find the policy and then they're going to be looking for, well, how do we go about implementing it? And I'm wondering if we can extract the process, a condensed version of the process, and put that on our website so it's a little user-friendly, or a little more user-friendly.
Yeah, I have no doubt that that's what the intention is, that there'll be some type of reference to where the public can go, and then there would be some modified, simplified process with respect to what the steps might be. So Mr. CAO, is that what is being planned? Okay. Councillor Lubberts, anything further? His answer was yes. His answer was
Yes? Oh, okay, all right, thanks.
Nothing further? Anyone else? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I forgot to mention that in the report and in the Let's Talk comments, there's a lot of concerns raised regarding regional roads. And I know this has come up in our traffic coordinating meetings, and the region is there. And my understanding from the last meeting is that the region is also undergoing a traffic calming review and policy, if I'm correct on that. I see Mr. Welsh shaking his head yes. So it's important to know that they are also kind of coming on board too with it. So they'll be very welcome when they get their report finished.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh, is there any intention to, this was raised the last time we were here about providing a copy of this report to the region, but is there any consideration given to coordinating a meeting with the region and the Niagara Regional Police, if this report passes, to talk about implementation steps and who might have certain roles? I know that in the report and the recommendations, there's a lot about education, supplemented by enforcement. A lot of people think that education's fine, enforcement has a better impact, but I presume that there's a balance on that. So will you be reaching out to the regional police and the region to collaborate with respect to traffic calming measures? Because we're responsible for municipal roads, but there's more than just municipal roads here.
That's correct. Both the region transportation division and the regional police have been integral in their comments into the drafting of this report. So they've been partners with us all along. As Councillor Noyes correctly points out, both teams are members of our TCC and provide valuable input into the meetings.
Okay. I think I had a few questions myself. So all of the comments from the public aren't absolutely supportive. Some of them take a contrary view, which I've come to learn is pretty typical. But as an example, one of the residents was complaining or pointed out that when decisions are made about traffic calming within a neighborhood, it should be more than just the people that live in the neighborhood that should have input into the decision, because it has an impact on people who are driving through the neighborhood, et cetera. Any comments on that or any observations on that?
When traffic calming is implemented within a neighborhood itself, typically it's a speeding issue. If there are residents from outside of the neighborhood, they're typically using that neighborhood as a cut through, which which isn't the goal of our road system. Our road system, our collector and arterial roads are meant for transporting cars, vehicles, pedestrians, et cetera, from one area of town to the other, and that's what they should be used for. If they're using neighborhoods for a cut-through, it's not serving the purpose of those local roads. So as much as I appreciate that people that use the roads from outside of the area should be consulted, I think we do have a step in here where we use the website. The members of the neighborhood itself use that road more frequently and are the primary users and those most affected by any traffic calming measures we would put in. So
It's
I
where
would,
they
I would
live.
take their view or their opinion in higher regard than somebody outside of the neighborhood.
And it's where they live and where their children play.
That's correct.
In terms of the test locations, in the report, it talks about Concession and Albany being initial test locations. That's two. We know that there are some other frequently referenced streets when we receive complaints about traffic, speeding, et cetera. Is there a potential to expand that initially? So instead of just doing two, we would maybe do four, a couple in other parts of the community, or is there a rationale for the two to start?
So the original RFP that we put out had in the scope of applying the proposed traffic calming policy on two roads. One was Black Creek Road, the other was Concession. We were getting quite a few complaints about issues on both roads. If you'll recall, we've put in speed cushions on Black Creek Road. I think they were authorized last summer. We got them in this spring. Or was it summer, Anne Marie? It was spring.
Councillor Noyes?
Councillor Noyes, thank you. Anyway, so we took Black Creek out of the equation and added in Albany. We will have our traffic data counters on there that measure volumes and speeds, which is the primary data we're trying to collect. We'll have those counters in very shortly. They remain in for about 2 weeks, and we will move on. Going into Councillor Butler's request for Ridge Road, that road, Erie Road, there's a couple other roads I've noted in the report. So we're going to get as much data as we can this year, but we will be running Albany and Concession through a test case to see how it would turn out in terms of if we need traffic calming, and if we do, we'll go to the next step and what type would be appropriate. And this is without public consultation. So it's just to make sure the policy, say, physics work without the public right now.
In the report, in terms of the screening criteria, it talks about roads where the speed limit is 50 kilometers or less. That's only one factor out of a number of criteria, so it could potentially be street calming for a street that's more than 50 kilometers?
It can be. It's tough to do, though.
And the 50 kilometers is typically in built-up neighborhoods.
That's correct, and that's typically where you use traffic calming. You don't like to use traffic calming out in rural areas. A lot of times it's a physical measure you're putting in, a chicane, narrow roadways, speed cushions, etc. In the rural areas, we don't have lighting at night, and when you can't see what's coming up, that leads to accidents.
Right. And all of the roads that you have mentioned as we've been talking about this report are 50 kilometers or less. In terms of the question that Councillor Noyes had raised, which, or wasn't a question, she commented about the speed display signs, which I understand we have some in-house.
We have one right now.
We have one. Is there any reason why that can't be deployed while we're still doing other things?
We will be deploying that within a week or two on Erie Road.
Okay, and will it stay there for a period of time and then be relocated?
It will be a couple of weeks, and they're nifty little devices. They show the public what their speed is, but the old systems only did that. These ones collect traffic data such as volume and speed as well, and we can download that and use that data as well.
Are there any in the report itself, there was nothing that referred to traffic signal cameras or red light cameras. I know that the region has a program where they're going to be putting maybe a dozen in across the region. Is there any reason why we wouldn't be trying to advocate for more traffic signals which would, catch speeding, but would also catch people who insist on going through red lights?
Right now, with our program in its infancy, I think we want to concentrate on this process right now. Certainly, there's nothing to stop us, but I don't think we have the technology in-house. It would be a contracted service, typically through the region, to install those. But I'm not sure what the legislative requirements are for a local municipality to undertake that. I know they can do it at the regional issue.
My understanding is that all of the traffic signals in Niagara are owned by the region.
No, that's incorrect.
So
we own traffic signals. We have a contract with them to maintain them.
They maintain them. Okay. Okay. And then just one final step then. What do you foresee if this passes and it moves to the bylaw stage? What do you foresee as the next steps in terms of implementation of the plan?
Certainly, as you spoke with the CAO, a public or a website or webpage on our website explaining the process in plain English. This can get a little confusing, I'll admit myself. Explaining the process and running our 2 locations through the test case, gathering data for our other locations that we can look at, and setting up the forms and such that the public can start applying for traffic calming.
So that in terms of some of these forms of traffic calming referred to in the report, we're looking at early next year, perhaps?
The educational components, such as our speed sign, that can go up anytime. I think it's even winter rated. So that can start as soon as possible. Enforcement is one of our traffic calming tools that continues with the regional police. In terms of physical measures, it may be a little longer. I would suggest, I wouldn't hold my breath for 2023, but I would certainly, myself, I would be disappointed if we didn't have something in place for 2024.
I think you should be holding your breath.
I'm a big guy.
Because because some of these measures are fairly easy, I think, to implement once they've been identified. Your concern would be making sure that you've got adequate data to justify the type of traffic calming measure the town might implement.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Noyes?
Just wanted to comment in regards to the speed display in the region. The region also has speed displays. And we've encouraged them at our traffic coordinating meeting that perhaps they would start liking to use them in Stevensville Road and Dominion and some other roads that we've had numerous complaints. So you sitting on the region, perhaps you can encourage that they start using their speed displays in Fort Erie. Thank you.
Yeah, I could, but we certainly could be, we could also be asking the region to deploy them, could we not, Mr. Walsh? You could do that through the administrative channel while Councillor Encina and I try to do it through the political channel.
Certainly. I've had conversations with Carolyn Real, the Director of Transportation Services, and they have noted Gorham Road or Stevensville Road in particular. I can't remember if they noted Dominion Road. Looking at Councillor Noyes. Bobbing her head.
If they've got any of the regional roads, people speed on all the regional roads. So any one of them one or more of them would be fine. So if you could follow that up with Ms. Ryle, that'd be appreciated.
Certainly.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes? Okay. If everyone has asked all the questions that they want, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations in the report? That is carried. That then takes us to, here's where we go to IS 21-1, and that would be you, Councillor Noyes, resolution number 2.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that IS 21-1-2022, public consultation for Douglastown Third Access pre-design review. The council receives report number IS 21-1-2022 for information purposes.
Are there any questions or comments? If there are none, sorry, Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to see the public participation, not only on Let's Talk Fort Erie, but also in today's, their delegations today. I think, from what I gather, that it's very clear that Baker Road would not be the preferred choice and that it should be south of Baker Road. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. So that then takes us to report IS 21, and that was previously moved. And there are 2 items still to be dealt with. And questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow, then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll be supporting this. I do have, obviously, I raised a concern when Mr. Hunter presented this evening about the situation south of Baker Road with the MTO and the right-of-way and the QEW being so close there. I don't necessarily know if there's something we can do. I don't think it's necessarily a showstopper, but I think this is going to be very difficult just from my understanding of corridor management. Certainly those will be interesting discussions when we're up at AMO about, what we can do. There may even be costs involved for the municipality if we're looking to have provincial highway infrastructure altered for the benefit of the residents of the town. I mean, that tends to be the way they do things. I just want to ensure that, looking at this, it's a very important issue that we have a third access. We saw that when the Baker Road, when Baker Road was ripped apart, we had to send everything out through Black Creek Road there, which is not exactly ideal for a heavy amount of traffic. It can't be widened. There's right-of-way constraints. It's a little frustrating for me on this term of council here. We would have had a third access along Simpson and I believe it's Mitchell Crescent as part of the original plan of subdivision to the north of Baker Road, and that was altered. And it's really unfortunate because now in hindsight, we've seen the challenges that such a situation is presenting. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do, what an environmental assessment comes up with, which has another public component to it, the opportunity to offer, there's public information sessions and other things. I think that's going to be important. This is just the beginning of a process, and I'm looking forward to seeing the process start, Your Worship, and those discussions in Ottawa in a few weeks, I'm looking forward to them because that'll be really telling to see, at least kind of giving us an idea of the feasibility of south of Baker Road. If we can make it happen, that would be ideal. It's just, it's unfortunate the challenges that the QEW there presents. So thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I can't support the Baker Road widening at this point, and when I read this, it looks like that we approve this, that we're basically saying that's the option that we're going to be looking at. And I do think that there is room for a discussion, there's room for negotiation with the MTO. If we can take out Baker Road widening and just put for the year 2023 general levy budget deliberations for environmental study for the third access, once chosen in the amount of $120,000, I could go for that, but I can't go for stipulating Baker Road.
Mr. Walsh, I don't know whether I read somewhere or whether you and I were talking about this, or maybe it was Mr. Judd had made reference to it, but if there's a municipal, we could set aside money in a budget for a municipal class environmental assessment, could we not?
Yes.
Without identifying exactly what it is for the time being.
Yeah.
And
What Councillor Noyes has suggested is perfectly acceptable.
Right. So that means that we would be able to set aside the money in the budget, but not commit ourselves at this point, which gives us an opportunity to discuss with the government what opportunities there may exist. So you're moving to amend the second recommendation to delete the words Baker Road widening?
Yes, I am.
And do you have a seconder? I'll second. Councillor Dubanow.
I have lots of seconders.
Okay. Victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. This obviously is going to be successful because everybody wants to be the father. Okay, I'm gonna call the vote on that amendment. All those in favor of removing Baker Road widening? That is unanimous. Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor.
No, I think I said earlier too, I do think that it should be south of Baker Road, and I will applaud and encourage your continued efforts of the MTO to get that. I have great confidence in your ability to convince people. Thank you.
See, this is a tactic that I frequently use when I want something from a minister. I will tell them I'm pretty sure that I'm confident that they can help us. And I see that you're using that tactic, Councillor Noyes. I'm not very appreciative. Okay, anything further? Anyone else? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I just want to follow up on Mr. Hunter's presentation. And he asked in a slide that we asked, I think there was 3 things to ask for from this council. Can we amend this to include his request? Or would that be a different motion?
Yeah, no, that's a delegation, that's a presentation, and the reason I asked for a copy of it to be circulated is because we can utilize that when we craft our presentation to the MTO, whether it's at AMO or whether it's elsewhere. So we'll be able to utilize it.
So his recommendations are going to be in our recommendations to the MTO, our presentation?
Well, it will be.
I just want to make sure that it is.
Well, it's not going to be his presentation. It will be things from his presentation that we will
Yeah, his
utilize.
recommendations is the 3 points that he brought up.
Well, maybe not those specific 3 points in that order. It may be broader, but we're going to be looking at those. The information that Mr. Hunter has put forward is very helpful in my view. And so we're going to look at that and we're going to see how much headway we can make. I can't guarantee that we're going to start where Mr. Hunter has started and where Mr. Hunter believes it's as far as we can go. I would be more inclined to try to find out exactly how far we might be able to push this. But definitely, his information is a foundation for the approach that we would make, particularly some of his observations about you can speak to me afterwards, Mr. Hunter, you're at this stage. So that's not part of the report, and it's not part of the recommendations in the report,
All right.
but it will be
It
part.
looks to me like he's satisfied. He's shaking his head, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure he's covered. That's
He's
all.
absolutely covered.
Yeah.
I thought his
Okay.
presentation was excellent, as everyone that he's ever made to us has been, and you're to be commended, Mr. Hunter. Okay, anyone else? If not, then I'm going to call the question on the recommendations as amended. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business inquiries. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that council accepts the resignation of Bridget Brown, Beachcombers representative from the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. Councillor Butler, did you want to raise an issue about the Fort Erie Lions request? And that was the the request was that the delegation or the request for funding for a pavilion at the Sugar Bowl Park be referred to staff for a report, and I would suggest that the report be returnable when the CAO at the CEO's discretion. He'll be the one who will determine. Have I completely confused you, Madam Clerk? McQueen? Comment?
So just to clarify, so we'll go back to staff and look at the time commitment to prepare that report and determine when best to bring that back to the council.
Yes, and it may very well be that the staff person who will be dealing with this has already done some background work and may be able to bring this forward, but I don't know that for sure, so I think that's what it would be. So the motion would be to refer the delegation to staff for a report to be returnable to council in the discretion of the CAO based on staff's ability to prepare the report. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Dubanow? Did you want to make any comments or have any questions?
Sure. I'll
Change the
make
motion?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that for me. No, I think it's a great idea to have a pavilion handy in that area, and for the simple reasons that Mr. Passero had mentioned, that it'll provide further forms of entertainment in that area, and a good structure to have, so thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to mention, we're so lucky to have service clubs like the Fort Erie Lions, even the Underwater Recovery. They have a different mandate, but they function similarly. The Ridgeway Lions with what they did at the Bay Beach Park. The Kinsmen going back years, they paid for the pool that went into the Sugar Bowl. We have such a history of strong service clubs and their ability to raise so much money through their hard work and the work of the community contributing to this. As much as this is an ask, it's also a success story to show that, just how much these individuals care about our community, the work they're willing to put in, and how they're willing to work with us to make the community better. So I'm looking forward to that report. I just wanted to mention that because especially the fundraising right now with COVID and especially inflation and recession concerns, it's getting real tough. And for them to raise that kind of money in this climate, it's just, they need to be commended for that. That is a true labor of love. And I just wanted to mention that, Your Worship.
That's very well said and certainly appreciated. Anyone else? I'm going to call the question. Oh, Councillor Lubberts. So it's a motion. Did you want to speak to that? Yeah, okay, so you'll be, okay. All those in favor of the motion by Councillor Butler? That is carried. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I guess my query is directed to Mr. Walsh. Now that we've gone through the traffic calming process and approved, I was talking to the gentleman that owns the antique store right at the corner of Queen Circle and Derby Road. And through our discussion, he was hoping that we could, there's a white line, thick white line that's painted halfway across the road right next to the stop sign. And so now he's asking if we could actually paint stop there. So this would go through this new traffic calming process.
Right.
And when will that be available to him? Or can he make the request now and then?
Mr. Walsh?
We don't have the forms quite ready yet. I can pass an email to you in the near future that you can pass on to your acquaintance that the forms are available. I would caution though, something like that may not necessarily fall into traffic calming, and it's more of our regulatory requirements, so it may not be the most appropriate avenue, but we can look into it regardless.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Butler, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have several inquiries, actually. The first one is an important one for me with respect to Pleasant Road and a hydrant that apparently is falling on the shoulders of the resident.
Can I tell you that I spoke to the property owner late this afternoon?
Okay,
And I briefly chatted with the CAO about that.
okay,
And so we're both going to be doing some further background information.
awesome.
And then I indicated to the property owner that this may require a meeting here. You definitely would be involved in the meeting.
Awesome.
I didn't mention it to you because it just happened later this afternoon.
Oh, that's great. Okay, moving on to the next important one then. So, in the area of Dominion Road, where there is a butcher shop and a pizza parlor, the rot issue that took place last year and the year before has resurfaced again with the residents nearby that area, and I'm just wondering if there is anything that we can do to help the residents that live behind those areas.
Can you say what it was again? The problem?
The rat issues?
The rats, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh.
Typically, I believe rats are a public health issue. Chris, do you want to take this on?
So my advice
not,
would
no.
be, my
Yeah,
advice
just so-
would be that this be referred to the region because it is a public health matter. And maybe the CAO, you could follow up with public health on this. We've had this problem in some parts of the town, and it's generally public health that gets involved. So you could maybe have a staff member. You don't have to do it personally, but maybe a staff member. I'm giving it to you because you're the CAO. And there's no one higher than you. Is that acceptable?
If I may, Mayor?
Yes.
We still have a program in place where businesses can approach the town with, we're in partnership with Orkin to take appropriate measures, do whatever magic they do on a cost-sharing basis. So that program is always available
Okay.
as well.
And then maybe that's something that you and Mr. McQueen can discuss. Thank you. Councillor Butler, back to you.
Thank you. I was speaking to a few business owners and a few residents within the Crystal Beach area and Ridgeway area, and the common theme was, can planning implement, I guess, a system where the hamlets within the municipality are branded so that when developers come in, they have to basically conform to what that brand is in the area?
So that would be a design guideline type of issue that the planners would have some interest in. Mr. Hurlovich, I presume that there are mechanisms to do that. I don't know whether we have any of them in place.
Well, I thought I heard the councillor say a grant.
No, brand. So in other words, you know how Niagara on the Lake requires certain design guidelines to be met, and I think that's what the question is.
Well, we do have staff who are working on municipal urban design guidelines. They are not yet ready, but they would be part of that.
And so just to follow that up, so the business owners would need to have some dialogue with the staff members who are dealing with that or we would be doing some outreach, we would be doing some public consultation on that?
We would be doing outreach work once we have something in draft format, but we aren't at that stage yet.
Right, okay. So my advice is that you would want to alert those business owners you spoke to. They're going to have to come up with some consensus as to what the brand is. Some cases it might be obvious, in some cases there might be some different views.
And then further to that, what I've been noticing and what some of my constituents have confirmed to me is that many of the subdivisions in the Ridgeway area are being built without any tree canopies or the ability to place greenery within the development itself. And one example is just off of Ridge Road and Thunder Bay area on the corner there. So some of the development within that area, I don't want to call out any developers themselves. Is there a mechanism that can be placed? Because I thought we had
We do.
a policy.
We do. We have a tree planting policy, and they're required to put
Yeah.
at least one tree per unit. The difficulty, I think, is that there's probably a backlog. I don't know
Okay.
whether you would know that, Mr. Hurlovich, or whether Mr. Walsh is responsible for the tree planting.
Your worship, I can confirm that we do have a program which would require the developer to plant trees, but I can't say whether or not there's a delay, but I can look into that particular subdivision for the councillor.
That would be good.
That would be great. Thank you. I'll
Yeah, they have to get all the grading done, and they have to get all the services completed, and so there is a delay, but they are, we definitely require that.
Okay, that's awesome to hear. And then my next issue is Kayart Road, and the director and I have been in conversation with this, but I was asked to drive that road, and I did, and I think maybe your crew did come out and settle some of the dust issues, but the road itself is starting to crumble now, and I'm wondering if we can take another look at that road.
Mr. Walsh?
We certainly can.
And then lastly, and I hope you indulge me in this, I wanted to start off by saying that this has been a great council, and that we have such respect for each other, and your leadership has been fantastic. And
Don't be embarrassing us.
I won't. Well, you're so humble, right? But 1 month from tomorrow is going to be the official end date for the registration for municipal council. And the reason I raise that is because I wanted to draw the public's attention to the fact that currently there are only 2 women that are scheduled to run, and it happens to be in Councillor Noyes' ward, and the rest are being populated by men at this point. And when I did some research, I looked at 32 positions at the regional council, and less than 25% are comprised of women. And then for the combined 12 municipalities, there's 106 positions that are going to be open up for the next election, and women occupy less than 30% of those positions. And further to that, I didn't see any visible minorities, nor did I see any Aboriginal peoples, nor did I see people with disabilities. And when I look at that, I think there's a huge disparity when it comes to representation at council. And I feel like it's important for us to make that known in the public domain, and say it is time for people to stand up and vocalize the importance for women and visible minorities and Aboriginal peoples and people with disabilities to come forward and have their voices heard. And the mayor has been so great in moving in a manner that really brings out equity and inclusivity and diversity. And I don't think that we have been pushing as a society to make sure that those individuals are represented in government as much as they should be. And I think that there has to be a mechanism for us to promote that. I don't know what that is, but great change can be made from grassroots efforts. We've noticed that locally here. This council has been fantastic in leading the charge and making motions in climate change from the mayor, advocating on behalf of constituents from Councillor Noyes, advocating, for really the rights of individuals to be heard and seen. those are commendable things, and I have to question, are we allowed as a municipality to start that kind of messaging within the domain so that we can encourage those people to come up and represent and advocate on behalf of diverse people for the community, and to make those silent voices heard, and to represent the underserved, the marginalized, and the underrepresented. And that's my question.
So the simple answer is, you recall that we passed a resolution not that long ago based on a recommendation from the Fort Erie Coalition of Diversity and Inclusion, asking us to support the concept that the next council would adopt equity, diversity, inclusion as a value. And so your answer to your question is, it's definitely something a local municipality can engage in and should engage in. In terms of candidates for elected office, there are a number of factors that will encourage or discourage individuals from running, individuals of all sorts, sizes, shapes, whatever. And so if the next council adopts the equity, diversity, inclusion as a value, I think that provides not only the opportunities for education of the broader public as well as the staff and the council, but it also provides the opportunity to perhaps develop a program that will reach out to the community, so that we've only got, as you say, we've only got a month, but the next council will have 4 years to look at things that they may be able to do to encourage a broader spectrum of candidates for public office in the next election. So that would be the long-term, I think, view. There's nothing to prevent us from asking people to seriously consider running for elected office, but it's a big decision. And at this stage of the game, people need a longer runway. If they haven't already been thinking about it, I don't think a month is a long enough runway for them. But it's definitely a concern that I have, because I believe that the strength of this council has been the fact that it has been balanced between men and women, and the different perspectives that you all bring to the table. So I'm glad that you brought that forward. It's a concern for me going forward, and I'm sure it's a concern for all of you. But there are some things that we can do, and with our new CAO, who's very familiar with inclusion and diversity equity issues, I'm sure that something positive can happen. And I just actually happened to discuss with the CAO's assistant, Bev Bradnan, who's engaged with the regional diversity, equity, inclusion committee, the possibility of utilizing some of the programming that they're putting together to bring here for our staff and for some of the broader organizations within our community that might want to participate. So thank you very much for raising that, because it's a very important aspect of this community. And this community, as much as any, has a very diverse population. And how you get those individuals to engage, it's a challenge, but I think the next council will have a great opportunity to do much more than we can do in the next 35 days or whatever the heck it is. Anyone else? We're still under new business and inquiries. Councillor Dubanow.
Well, Your Worship, thank you. I really don't want to take away what Councillor Butler said with an infrastructure-related comment, but I'll just mention that when you're gifted with this platform and you get to do what you enjoy and the residents trust you, it's up to us to ensure that we share that gift we've received, to ensure that individuals who may not have those same benefits are receive them. So I take what Councillor Butler said very seriously. That's very important. And I just want to comment, like, my direct eye shot here is, there's all the mayors that served in Fort Erie. We have portraits of them, and direct eye shot is two women who served as mayors of Fort Erie. I think it was back in the 70s and the 80s, which in a community this size at that time, we had Hazel McCallion in Mississauga, but we've got, oh goodness. Thank you, Ms. Ziff and Faraza. And I knew that, and it's because I'm on the spot right now that I couldn't think about it. There's a very nice park in Crystal Beach that's named after Ms. Faraza there, so I just want to comment on that. Going back to the issue I actually did want to raise, it's just going back to the issue of ditches, and it's not even so much a question that response is required. It's more of a thought, just for staff listening, as well as Councillor Noyes as Chair of Infrastructure. I did have an opportunity today to meet with a resident on Taylor who conveyed to me the concerns he had with a very deep ditch, and it actually left track marks from vehicles trying to get in because how wet it is. Bulrushes are coming up, and every time he goes to mow it, I think I touched on it during our last meeting, it's costing him $150 because his riding lawnmower isn't safe anymore. He doesn't feel safe doing it, and I've had opportunity to speak with residents over on 10th as well, who have risked injury trying to maintain these things to a standard not only suitable to the municipality, but also, these are their homes and they have pride of ownership, and they want to ensure that their homes and the effort they put into them is reflected in the view. And it's becoming frustrating for residents because they're trying to maintain their ditches to the best they can, despite all the challenges, and yet up the road, they've got the bulrushes and there's no consistency, and I get it because of how hard these are. So I'm not, unless there's something that a member, from the meeting, unless there's something that a councillor or Mr. Walsh wants to share, I'm not asking for that tonight. I just want to share again, the concerns that the residents have. I'm really hoping we can come up with some sort of policy regarding maintenance or some other work. It's been a concern that's been dragging on for a very long time, and I'm doing what I can to advocate for the residents who are facing this challenge. So that was just my comment, and whoever just has to take that into advisement. It's just, we got to keep these wheels moving, that's all. Thank you, Your Worship.
Mr. Walsh, do you have any comment at this time?
Mr.
On this
Mayor,
topic?
we have added the item to our agenda for Wednesday afternoon, so we'll discuss it there further.
Right, that's this week. Any other items of new business or inquiries? Mr. Walsh, can I just ask you to, when you get the opportunity, check where we are in terms of the stormwater management policies that we had talked about, the changes, et cetera? That would be a big project, and I know that your staff is currently overwhelmed. But if you could...
Yeah, we haven't started it right now. We're short-staffed in the engineering section. We've lost a manager, and we've had a couple of illnesses right now. So everybody's doing time and a half in there.
Okay, I'm just putting that out there because that's a big issue for us with the new subdivisions. Okay, there are no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motion? There being none, that takes us to item 15, which is a closed session matter. And Councillor Butler, you have the resolution to move into closed session, resolution number 4.
I do. I do need a seconder, though.
Councillor Lubberts? Don't be a hog.
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Lubberts, that council will now hold a closed session meeting at 8:29 p.m. to consider the following. A, pursuant to Section 2392C of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding sale of 271 Ridgeway Road.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is unanimous, so we're going to go into closed session. Okay, we're back in session, and Councillor Dubanow, you have the resolution to bring us out of closed session.
I do, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes that council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 9:03 p.m. with report that staff proceed as directed.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That then takes us to bylaws, and we have one bylaw, 90-2022, that needs to come out of the package. I'd like the STR bylaw to be removed as well. That's 98-2022. Are there any others that anyone wishes removed from the bylaw package? If not, then Councillor Butler, would you proceed with first and second reading of the amended bylaw package, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that the bylaw package containing 81-2022 to authorize the execution of a subdivision agreement with 2835033 Ontario Inc., Mitchell Williams, Alliston Woods Subdivision, 82-2022 to authorize a franchise agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Fort Erie and OnBridge Gas Inc., and to repeal bylaw number 164-2002, 83-2022 to authorize the sale of lot 580, plan 480, Birdie, 0 Richmond Avenue, to Ryan Bellafiel and Karen Bellafiel. 84-2022 to exempt certain lots in Plan 59M-483 from part lot control Mitchell Crescent, Black Creek Signature Subdivision, Rinaldi Homes, Niagara Inc. 85-2022 to accept and declare lands as public highway on the southeast corner of Foster Street and Coral Avenue, 2485 Stevensville Road, David Pliley and Carl Pliley. 86-2022 to accept and declare lands as public highway at the southeast corner of Smalls Road and Willowwood Avenue and the southwest corner of Smalls Road and Cherry Hill Boulevard, 229 Cherry Hill Boulevard, -1000112967 Ontario Inc., John Lally. 87-2022 to authorize the acquisition of vacant land from the estate of Marie Naples for parkland purposes in Part 0-7954 Prospect Point Road North, Paul DeFilia, Estate Trustee. 88-2022 to amend bylaw number 185-2000 as amended charitable gaming policy for the town of Fort Erie and to repeal bylaw number 187-2000. 89-2022 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended 409 Gorham Road, Inc., David Compson, owner. 91-2022 to enact an amendment to the official plan adopted by bylaw number 150-06 for the town of Fort Erie planning area, amendment number 61-0-10546 DePietro Street, 2655321, Ontario Limited, Mark Spadafora, owner. 92-2022 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended 0-10546 DePietro Street, 2655321, Ontario Limited, Mark Spadafora, owner. 93-2022 to approve the final assessment levy for the St. John's Marsh Municipal Drain. 94-2022 to adopt the engineer's report for drainage works in the town of Fort Erie in the regional municipality of Niagara for the municipal drain known as the Shill Municipal Drain. 95-2022 to approve the final assessment levy for the Shill Municipal Drain, and 96-2022 to delegate authority with respect to restricted acts from nomination day. 97-2022 to establish the annual remuneration for mayor and members of council to repeal bylaw number 44-12 is given first and second reading.
Well done. That was the longest first and second reading resolution I think we've had this term. Councillor Noyes.
I'm sorry, I should have asked for 97-2022 to be removed, because I will not be voting in favor of that one.
Okay.
Too late?
It's on the floor, and it's already been, we haven't voted on it yet, have we? I usually call a vote, because for first and second reading, it just gets it on the floor, but we
think it
didn't vote yet.
I think it should have been removed.
Yeah. Okay, so let's remove 97-2022. I haven't called the vote yet, so that is removed from the package as well. And so the package is amended, which is all of the bylaws with the exception of 90, 97, and 98 for 2022 is on the floor. All those in favor, first and second reading? None opposed, that is carried. So that package is on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make a comment on bylaw 87-2022, which is the acquisition of the vacant land from the estate of Murray Naples. I think this is a wonderful addition to our parkland, and I think it really it shows our environmental conservatorship that we take it seriously. I think it'll be a huge asset to the town, and it's an important piece of property that now we can add to Shade Park. And the other one I wanted to comment on was 89-2022, the Gorham Road, the Liquor Control Board trailer. I noticed, and I'm glad to see the conditions in there, but is there any timeline for that?
Timeline in respect of what?
Well, it talks about, okay, I've just lost my thing, hang on. It talks about the conditions, and one of the conditions is that it have to, about the driveway. 1 second. It talks about the special provisions, the use of the trailer for a liquor store, but also the parking lot surface is required that suppresses dust and is navigable for accessibility purposes. I think it should be at the discretion of the Director of Infrastructure, but is there any timeline? They can say, well, you know, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. And I can remember they made promises a while ago, a few years ago, about the dust suppressant, and they never did get to that. So I'm just wondering if there's any timeline we could put in there that it has to be done by a certain...
Mr. CAO. Any comment?
I may ask for clarification from Mr. Hurlovich if he has more current information.
Yes,
I
I'm
understand.
Sorry. Mr. Hurlovich.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I received an email from the
Mr.
planning
Walsh.
consultant. Thank you. Late last week, saying they had read the conditions and had taken action already. I went out there Thursday afternoon for a quick inspection and took Bev Bradnam out this morning. I had concerns about the accessibility of the parking lot. So I don't think you need to put a deadline on it in response to your question. They are taking action already. I can let council know how it's going at the next meeting, but it is moving.
Okay. Councillor Noyes?
Yeah, I'm quite satisfied with that explanation. I just didn't want to just leave it, but that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else? Then we're going to go to third and final reading. Councillor Dubanow, the package as amended.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaws 81, 2022, 82, 2022, 83, 2022, 84, 2022, 85, 2022, 86, 2022, 87, 2022, 88, 2022, 89, 2022, 91, 2022, 92, 2022, 93, 2022, 94, 2022, 95, 2022, and 96, 2022 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments with those bylaws in the amended package? If not, all those in favor? That is carried. So Councillor Butler, I'm going to go back to you for first and second reading for bylaw number Who has the conflict with 90? I do. For bylaw 90, 2022, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes. Thank you. That the bylaw package containing 90-2022 to amend zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended, 28 Ridge Road South, Integra Inc., Mike Stepien, owner.
All those in favor? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for any questions or comments. If none, who's going to move that? Councillor Noyes, would you move third and final reading for bylaw number 90? You'll need a seconder.
I'll second it.
Councillor Butler will second that.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor
Butler?
Butler. I'm looking at her and reading McDermott's name. That bylaw number, was it 90?
Yep.
-2022 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstaining?
Well, I'm just trying to write my name.
It carries regardless. Okay, so then that takes us back to first and second reading for bylaw 97,
Okay.
2022.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow. That the bylaw package number 97-2022 to establish the annual remuneration for mayor and members of council and to repeal bylaw number 44-12 be given first and second reading.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for any questions or comments. There are none. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I missed the council meeting last week because I was on vacation, and I just wanted to thank all the members of council for moving this forward because I think it's an important step in the evolution of equality for councillors being compensated fairly. So thank you.
Okay. Councillor Dubanow, third and final reading of that bylaw.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes that the bylaw 97-2022 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And that then takes us to bylaw 98, 2022.
Okay, thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that the bylaw package containing 98-2022 to amend business licensing bylaw 217-05 as amended, short-term rentals be given first and second reading.
All those in favor? That is carried. That bylaw is on the floor for questions or comments. I would point out that we received correspondence from Amanda Marshall with respect to section 5.1, which talks about obtaining information of those who are occupying the premises during the rental. We were advised in the email that typically they get the name and address and particulars of the renter. They can get the names of the renters, but they never get the addresses. And so her question was, what would be the purpose? I tended to agree with her. Is there anyone who would be interested in removing from section 5.1b the words "and residential address" near the beginning of that? Councillor Butler, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Dubanow? So that it would read the name of any other person or persons, etc., with no reference to the address. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Noyes.
Just on that point, should there be some indication of how we would contact if we needed to contact?
The person that you would need to, so on our regulatory scheme, it's the owner of the property that's responsible. So if there's a penalty, we would issue that to the owner. The owner, in some of the agreements, and I believe the ones for the organization that Ms. Marshall represents, they obtain undertaking from the renter, that the renter will pay whatever the fine might be. But that doesn't take care of the accumulation of demerit points, which the owner is responsible for. So we would only need to know who the owner is. It's helpful for us to know who the renter, the primary renter is. We really don't need to know the addresses of the number of renters. We need to know how many are there and whether it complies with the regulation.
If I can, just a comment on that. Okay, so if I didn't want to be a good I wanted to kind of skirt the system, I would say, okay, Mr. John Smith, Mr. Tom Jones, Mr. Mickey Mouse. Are, like, I think sometimes if you ask for more information, like how you can contact them, or again, the address, I mean, how do we prevent someone from putting anybody's name down? You know?
So I thought about that as well, and when our bylaw enforcement officer shows up because there's been a complaint that it's a 3-bedroom unit, but there's 6 cars parked in the driveway and it's after 11 o'clock, they go in and really, to a great extent, it doesn't matter what the names of the people are. If there's more than 8 people there, that's a violation. So as long as they know who the owner, as long as we know who the owner is, as long as the owner knows who the primary renter is, we just need to know how many people are there. This just gives us a bit better ability, I think, going back to see, okay, so you've given us names. You've given us 8 names, and these are the 8 people. We show up and there are 10 people there. Doesn't really matter. We know that there's too many. So that, I think, was the point that Ms. Marshall was trying to make. You really don't, if you've got the names, really the addresses don't give you any additional assistance in enforcing the bylaw.
Okay, that's fine.
Anyone else on that point? So on that amendment to bylaw 98, 2022, all those in favor? That is carried. Are there any other questions or comments on this? If not, paragraph 9.8 got a little confusing, and I discussed this with Ms. Grummett, and I'm having trouble with my iPad. Okay. So if you look at 9.8, A talks about 2 years, and then it talks about if there's an offense during that 2-year period, there's an additional year. So that gets us to 3 years. If you go to subparagraph B, it talks about another contravention during the 1-year period described in the paragraph above, but then it says that's for a total of 3 years. No, that would be 4 years. And then if you go to the next one, that says 4 years, but that's actually 5 years. So I believe the remedy is to remove subparagraph B because we've already got 3 years in 9.8A. Then C would become subparagraph B, and that further 1-year period takes us to 4 years. But the reference within the body of that subparagraph to 9.8B should be 9.8A, because it refers back to the immediately preceding paragraph after we've stricken out B. And then the one that's designated currently as D would be lettered to subsection C. And again, it's a 1-year suspension. That actually takes it to 5 years. But in the second line of that subparagraph is a reference to 9.8C, which should be 9.8B, which would be the immediately preceding paragraph. Is that confusing everybody? If you're confused, then I guess we have a problem. Okay, so the short of it is this. We don't need subparagraph B. What we do need is subparagraphs C and D to be re-lettered to B and C. Within the body of each of those, in the second line, there's a reference to the previous subparagraph. So if you're re-lettering C to B, then you have to re-letter within the body of that paragraph 9.8B to 9.8A. And then for the final paragraph, which would now become C, you have to change the paragraph in line 2 of that to 9.8B as opposed to 9.8C. And that gets then the 2 years for the first offense plus successive years for each additional violation to a maximum of 5. So if you've got it, would you be interested in moving that? Is there anyone that feels comfortable seconding that? Councillor Butler. Does anybody need any further explanation on this? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so paragraph 9.8 would be amended. Councillor Lubberts, you know that you've asked us to do this. So 9.8 is amended. 9.8B is out. 9.8C is B. 9.8D becomes C. And the references in the body of those on the second line goes from 9.8B to 9.8A. And for the new C, 9.8C to 9.8B. So who's on first? Don't ask me to repeat that. Okay, I'm going to call the question on that amendment. All those in favor? That is carried. Does anyone else have any other observations, questions, or comments on this bylaw? If not, then we're going to, oh, go ahead. Third and final reading, yep.
Sorry, I was jumping the gun, Your Worship.
Oh, that's great.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw 98-2022 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the amended bylaw? That is carried. That takes us then to first and second reading for the confirmatory bylaw, and that's Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes, that bylaw number 99-2022 to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on July 11th, 22, and council meeting held on July 18th, 22 is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, third and final reading.
Thank you, Mayor. I move on myself and seconded by Councillor Dubanow that bylaw number 99-2022 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Scheduling of meetings. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, there's an infrastructure meeting on July 20th at 3 p.m. in room 3.
That is this Wednesday. Anyone else? There is a Niagara Regional Transit Commission meeting tomorrow at the Region at 3 p.m. And Fire Station 4, the official opening takes place on Saturday, July 23rd at 1 p.m. And they'll get a chance to climb all over the trucks and the whole bit. Any other meetings? If not, Councillor Dubanow, final resolution.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Noyes that council adjourns at 9:27 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on August 22nd, 2022.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.